really so much to talk about in here, and I hope that this is really truly a blessing to all of you here today regarding this. One of the first things that I want to share with this parasha, of course, and I want to ask the question to all of you, have you ever been so excited about something in your life only for someone to come and crush your dreams through words? Never. This parasha is really packed with life lessons, not just religious lessons, but rather life lessons. And please heed to this because, again, it doesn't matter who you are. All humanity suffers from this. Today we're going to really pay attention. I want to really focus a lot in the Musar aspect of this, which is Gevurah in Hebrew. We'll talk more about that later. Right now I want to share a little bit more of the what the actual Torah says and really where it's heading with this direction. So we know that so far in here, the children of Israel were promised a land flowing with milk and honey, right? It's a promise. Your milk and honey can be anything in this life, by the way. Now we have the real milk and honey, which is the land of Israel. Don't get me wrong. We don't neglect these things. Okay, but we also have here in the Galut, in our exile, God has promises for each and one of us, such as prosperity, joy, you know what I mean? Triumph, all these different things that God says, I have in store for each and one of you. But then comes life and tells us, no, you're dreaming. That's not a reality. You're watching too many Disney movies, right? And of course, this is what happens. I really want you to pay attention because what's happening in here, in this portion, is actually happening in this life right now. The difference is that we actually commit this sin that they committed. We do it through Facebook. See, we have technology now. Now we spread the Lashon Hara all through Facebook. And we crush people's dream through social media. And it's so easy to do, right? Because I have an electronic piece of equipment here, so the people that I'm insulting, they're not in front of me. See? So this is so provocative, and it's just so intuitive to do that people freely do it. But I want to share some pointers in this parasha. It opens up by saying they reported to him. So in here, first and foremost, it was the people's request that they go and spy the land. This was never, ever that this came from God. God didn't say, you know what? In order for you to believe the words that I'm trying to convey to you, I need you to go spy the land. This was literally birthed by the people. And Hashem said, well, if this is the case, then Moses send these leaders. Don't be sending the whole people out there because that will be disastrous, but rather send, one leader from each tribe to go along. And then, spy out the land and bring the facts of the land. So this is going to be very important later. I need you to bring truly an account, essentially, of the land. And this is going to be really totally for the purposes of what? Building the people. Building their faith. So that they can trust and they can believe. So it's kind of intuitive what happened. Because that was the whole purpose was to build the faith. Not to destroy their faith. But aside from that, so we pick up in here because it says they reported to him and said, right? And it's very interesting. If you're going to be using the word reporting, for instance, anybody have like a little tissue or something so I can clean my glasses, if you don't mind. If you're trying to convey a report, like for instance, really what Moses was what it was actually commanded that they do. Like bring an account in this case. Thank you. Bring an account of what you guys are experiencing over there, right? The really appropriate Hebrew word that we use will be diveach in Hebrew. Diveach in Hebrew literally means you bringing literally like an account, like factual things that are true, the facts essentially. But in this parasha, they don't use the word diveach. When it says in here that they're reporting, some translation may not say they reported, it may say they said. Yeah, much better. But in the actual Hebrew, it says, Vayesaferu lo, it says. Lo with a vav, meaning to him, essentially. So they didn't, it doesn't use the word diveach, but vaya, it used vayesaferu, which is from the Hebrew word sefer, and where we get sipur. And what does that mean? Sefer is a book, sipur is a story. So what's the Torah is telling us that when these men came back, they didn't actually bring actual facts. They brought a story according to their understanding. This is why it's so intriguing in Hebrew when you really can see that, if you can read it. You know what I mean? So they didn't bring the actual facts, but rather they bring what their version of the story was. This happens all the time in our society today. People will always bring you their version of the story as opposed to really the actual facts of the story or the events that transpired. We have to be very careful, folks. What the first thing that the Torah is teaching us in here is we need to be very careful what report we're getting. Because report can either build or can they destroy. We're going to find out in this parasha, it literally destroyed an entire nation. So bad was this that we celebrate, or rather it's not so much a celebration, but we observe Tisha B'Av. And Tisha B'Av actually occurred because of this event that happened here. The people were mourning all night, it says. And according to our beloved sages, it says that the reason why they were mourning all night is because of what they heard, but Hashem says they're mourning for no reason. And because of that, this became an event in Jewish history, Tisha B'Av, that we celebrate, or rather again observe in a very, very somber way, because the most tragic events in Jewish history took place during this time. Do you think that's coincidence? What is the Torah teaching us? You know, folks, you can make your reality a reality. Your reality can be very ugly. Now, what are the odds that most tragic events in Jewish history happen on the account of receiving bad report from people who decided to present their point of the story? Now, through this event, all through history, through the line of history, all bad events take place. This is it. You know, if we start accepting negative things in our lives, guess what? You're going to live a life of negativity. And if you're always worrying about a downfall, your life will be a downfall. Like, that's going to be it. You know what I mean? This is just so intriguing, so powerful, because if this was just an isolated event, I want to submit this. If this was just an isolated event, why is it that on this same date all the tragic happened? Like, okay, you can get one event that so happens to be that it fell on Tisha B'Av, which is on the date of this event. Okay, chances of that happening once, probability. Chances of over and over and over that happening, come on, guys. We can't say that's coincidence. You see what I mean? So, again, we have to remember in this case not to be accepting this. So, what happens in here is that they already came. It says, Vayisaferu lo, right? So they already coming with the sipur, the story. Then it says, Vayomru ba'u el ha'eres asher shilechanenu vegam zava chalav utbash. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. Okay? Then it says, Hi veze priya. And veze priya, here is the fruit. Which, by the way, Rashi interprets this as a very negative connotation. While we may look at it as something positive, it's actually something negative. Because according to Rashi and some of the other commentators in the Torah, the land was flowing with all kinds of other vegetables and grains and onions and all these kind of good things. One cannot survive out of figs. Let's put it that way. So they were just really, it was in a very subtle way. They were not really truly being truthful. They were really discouraging in a very, very subtle way. So it says that here's the fruit. Now it says, In the English, it says, and indeed it flows with milk and honey, and here is its fruit. Another aspect that we learn from this parasha that our beloved sages teach is that when somebody wants to bring a lie to you, it always comes disguised with the truth. This is like one of the elements that are most important that the rabbis really, really emphasize on, is that they say no one ever will come to you with falsehood because they will deny you. Like if I come to you with 100% falsehood, you're going to run away from me. But now if I bring an element of truth into it, it's enticing. What the despised do was very, very, very deceitful. So they came with elements of truth. Hey, the land truly is flowing with milk and honey. What Rabbeinu Mosheh said was absolutely true. So what's happening is now they are what? They're reinforcing the good of the land. Which what they're trying to do essentially, they're trying to build credibility. See, if they can build credibility, they can get the confidence from the people. This is the aim. The end game is how do we get millions of people to trust us as opposed to Moses? Now that's a good question for us today. How did the religious group manage to mislead people so often and reject Moses? Think about that. At a much grander level, right? And here we see there was millions of people. And these spies, at least 10 of them came in and they're like, it is good, but now we're going to get to the but. This is what it gets really, really interesting. Are you with me so far? It says, but the people that dwells in the land is powerful. Right? Now, if you were trying to convey, again, this is all beautiful in Hebrew. If you're trying to convey conjunction like but from a sentence, in Hebrew you would have used aval. You would have used umal. You would have used ach. Like these are terminologies that we find in Tanakh that convey like really the meaning of a conjunction of the word but. In other words, Joe, the land was flowing with milk and honey, and it's all great. But here's the thing. Now, when I say but, it's really, really good. But here we have some challenges, but I think we can overcome this. Like the but really, it's not necessarily comes in a negative form. It could, but not always. It could just mean, hey, it's good, but we got challenges at the same time that we have to confront. But we can kind of make this happen. But that's not what it's conveying in Hebrew. See, in Hebrew, it doesn't use any of those terminology. When it says but, the Hebrew word for but in there is not aval. It's not umal. It's not ach. So what it actually does say. See, this is what I love about it, because in Hebrew actually tells you what's really happening in the story. What is the intent of these people? The actual intent of these people. What was it really? So, when it says in here that here is the land, veze priya, then it says, Efes ki az ha'am vayoshev ba'eretz, והערים בצורות גדולות מאוד. It uses the word ephes, which in a very, very limited time in biblical Hebrew you can use to convey that word, and usually is in a negative form. So what is ephes? Instead of using aval to mean but, the biblical Hebrew use ephes, which literally means zero. As a matter of fact, when you do numeric in Hebrew, it's Ephes, echad, shtaim. You see what I mean? So Ephes literally means to bring to nothing. What's happening? What is it trying to convey to us in here? When they went to say but, their intention was to bring the promises to nothing. That's why the Hebrew says Ephes. You see what I mean? As opposed to aval, or ach, or umal. All these different terminology that they could have conveyed to really mean, but as an objection. But in here, it's not an objection. Rather, I am coming with the intent to destroy and to take away all the promises of God. Or yoloi. This happens to us all the time, folks. Don't let anybody in your life rob you from the promises that God has conveyed to you. Don't let the Ephes affect your life. And outside of the parameters of religion, this happens in the secular world all the time. Like God has built you and has given you promises that even as human beings, people who don't even believe in God can ascend to greatness. How is that possible? Because that's the way we were wired. You don't even have to believe in God to succeed. I'm not promoting not to believe in God. I'm just saying that we see this. There's atheists out there that are very successful, have very happy lives. They're very centered. How does that happen? Because that's the way we wired. See, if we learn to overcome and we learn to remove the negativity from our lives, we can actually achieve greatness. How much more when we actually have God, though? See, that's the whole point. The point that I'm trying to make in here is that this is just amazing how words can literally destroy. The promised land in here is alluded to the Torah, is alluded to the land of Israel, which is flowing with milk and honey. Don't let anybody rob you from that, folks. Don't let anybody in the world rob you from that. We're past this parashah, but the parashah in Bereshit teaches us about the Sulam. The Sulam is really the ladder of Jacob. They went from the heavens down to the earth. From the earth up to the heavens. Vice versa. And the idea is that we want to every day we should be striving to elevate ourselves, folks. And God is there to help us. Don't be happy with just being in step 2 of the ladder. Don't be complacent with step 2. Continue to elevate. Continue to go up the ladder. That is the whole point. To reach to the divine, to reach to holiness. And by the way, what is the dream? The dream is angels going up and down. When you ascend to the loftiest, don't stay up on the loftiest. Bring that down to earth. The idea is to connect the divine with the mundane. It's the whole point of the dream. But we'll talk more about that when we get to that parasha and the cycle when it comes back. But this is basically the same thing in here. They're ascending. Here, God is showing them through Rabbeinu Mosheh, here's a taste of the promises that awaits you. And what that teaches us that every time there's good news, there's going to be always somebody there to counteract that good news. All the time. Guarantee. Question is, what are we going to do with it? We can end this teaching right now and continue to talk about this because this is so powerful and it's so related to our lives. Like we can actually connect with this. There's a kesher in here that it's very, very, very important. So it says in here that Ephes, meaning we cannot do this. There's no way. So it says in here, Betzurot gedola meot. Vegam, then it says, and also Vegam, Yeledei ha-anak. Then it says Ra'iu sham, and we saw Anak there as well. This is going to be interesting because the sages say that all of this is hot air. They never saw any of them. Like all this is added information that's not even true. So now they're saying that they actually saw Anak there. Then it says Amalek Yoshev be'eretz ve'negev ve'hachiti ve'hayoshubi ve'ha'amori. Yoshev Bahar says ve'hakanani. Yoshev al hayam ve'al yad ve'yaldan. They saw them all. The Yeshubites, the Canaanites, the Amorites. They're all up in the sea of the Jordan. They are covering the mountains. By the way, one of the intriguing things about this too that I forgot to mention is that as we're sharing this, one thing that the people did that was very, very, again, not only Hebrews demonstrating that they have an intent in here, but according to our beloved sages, it says that they did this in public. Like they're bringing these news to Moses, and they're making sure that everybody is listening to this. Like, hey guys, it's really good with honey, but let me tell you, man, those guys up there, they're going to beat you up. In other words, folks, the question is this. We have to really come to the realization is if what we're fighting for is worth it. Because really, this is where it boils down to. Was there challenges going up to the land? Yeah, lots of challenges. Let me ask you something. Has anyone ever aspired to greatness, have reached greatness without challenge? Then it's not much about greatness then, is it? You can't brag about greatness if there's no challenge to get to greatness. What's the point then? What are you bragging about if anybody can do it? No, a lot of people don't do it because they don't want to face this. You see, a lot of us don't want to face the giants in our lives. We're afraid of these giants because we're afraid of failure. We're very sensitive to those things. Here in this portion, God is teaching us through this portion that we need to be able to overcome. And we're going to see really how this plays out. It's really amazing in how the parasha reveals this in such a amazing way. Look, when it says in here, and I gotta say, I gotta add to this. When it says Efes ki az ha'am vayoshe ba'eretz, then it says ve ha'arim, which it's saying that Ephes, of course, but we saw the people dwelling there in the earth, ba'eretz, on the land. Then it says ve ha'arim, which is talking about in the cities. Not the land, but technically the cities. Ha'arim is a city. Ve ha'arim betzurot gedolot me'ot. That word in there for Hebrew for betzorot literally means like something that is very like a distress, something that's very confined. What they were telling the people is that this land that we're going to go to, in order to obtain it, I'm paraphrasing in here, it's going to come with a lot of distress, and it's very narrow. It's tight. You know, it's not good. It's not an easy catch. See, this is the thing that's so mind-blowing, is that they did present the truth of the land being great, but they also demoralized the truth with the challenges. In your walk, whether you're religious or not, in your religious walk, you're going to have these challenges. The more you want to ascend to greatness, the more challenges comes in. The more you ascend to greatness, the narrower it becomes. That is so true. And this is where I believe the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob challenges us. If you want to draw closer to me, it comes with challenges. Now, outside of religion, in the secular world, if you want to come out of the situation that you're in, then deal with your Amalek. Deal with your giants that are holding you back. Because the only person that is holding you back in this life is the one that you look in the mirror every morning. You can't blame. You know, that's one of the things that our society has been really good in teaching us is the blame game. Whenever somebody has an unfortunate situation, this would have been great if Joe would have done his job. You know what I mean? Only if Joe would have done his job, I would have shined. But he messed up, so here we are. See? If Gary would have just called me last week, then this would have been great. But he failed to call me. See? And we continue to play the game, the blame game. What is the Torah? The Torah is teaching us no. You have to face. And 9 out of 10, we do this because we're trying to avoid facing the giants that are in our lives. Now, those giants can come disguised as fear. It can come disguised in numerous different ways. Fear of failure. Usually that's the case. We don't want to fail. We're afraid to fail. Can I share something with you regarding failing? No great person ever achieved greatness without failing. Not one. Not even one person. Every person, one in the point of their life, failed many different ways. You know, just to name a few, Donald Trump, how many times he went bankrupt? He became president of the United States. There you go. You look at Michael Jordan. Many people don't know this about Michael Jordan. He wasn't good enough in basketball at one point. He didn't even get drafted in high school. Now, if you were to see Michael Jordan, you're like, no way that this man was not good in basketball. And he himself said it. Do you know how many shots I missed? Do you know how often I failed? but it's through my failure that I became great. See, once we fail, failing is a tool that God uses to build you up. I want you to know that right now. And if you take that tool, you can either use it for the proper way to actually excel and be great, or you can take it and say, I'm running away and fail completely. But it's actually a tool. It's interesting. It's actually a tool. Failure is a tool to make you great. You with me so far? Nay or yay? Okay. So this is the aspect that we want to say. Now I want to share this with you in here. The teachings of Rabbi Nachman, it says in here, any falsehood that does not have an element of truth in it will not endure, essentially. And look at Moharan says, from this statement of the spies, we see that in order for the people to accept a false statement, it must have some relationship of truth, of course. So when it says that the land was flowing with milk and honey, Rambam actually, not Rambam, but the Rebbe in here, Nachman, states that Eretz, the land, is actually associated with Ratzon, desire. This is very, very intriguing, very interesting. One who wishes to enter the Holy Land must fortify himself with much longing and desire to reach its goal. Wow. That's why Eretz and Ratzon in Hebrew correlate and have a really, really mutual relationship. This is really, really amazing. So you have to have Ratzon. You have to have desire. This is just so amazing because this is the problem that we have in today. There's not a lot of people with desire. Yeah, I kind of like this whole Holy Land thing. Sounds good. Desire's not really there. We have to have desire. Same thing for our again, taking this to the secular world. I want this teaching today to be really, really tangible. Same thing in the secular world. You know, if you want to aspire for greatness, well, how much you desire it? Because if desire is not there, the minute you fail, that's the last you're going to see of it. You're going to be gone. So a lot of this is making sense, right? And that's the whole idea. It has to make sense because it's God's word. So the spy knew this, it says in here, according to the Nachman. The spy knew this, but since they wanted to keep the Jews out of the land, they spoke deceitfully. They said, it is flowing with milk and honey, and this is its fruit, meaning with longing and desire for the land, meaning holiness, we can ascend the ladder of spirituality. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, meaning the obstacles confronting us are greater than the strength of our desire. Wow. The obstacles confronting us, folks, are greater than our desire. That really is the answer there. Our desire needs to be greater than the obstacles. Because that's the only way we can beat the obstacles. And again, this is a lesson for life in general. For life in general. So what happens? It says in here, according to the Torah, at that very moment, Caleb silenced the people towards Moses and said, we shall surely ascend and conquer it, for we can surely do it. Listen to the words of this Sadiq. You know, Yeser Hara, which is the evil inclination that we all are equipped with, okay, will always tell you you can't do it. You know, there was one point in life that talking to yourself meant that you need to go to a mental institution. But as it turns out, talking to yourself is very healthy. It's really, really healthy. Because you have to be able to neutralize the voice in you that's telling you you can't do it. Every day. When you wake up, Yeser Hara wants you to do nothing but be a bum all day. See? You have to talk your way out of this. You have to say, like Caleb in here, no, we will conquer it. You see what I mean? So inside of us, there's always the 10 spies that is always discouraging us. We don't have to wait for somebody to come and tell us, or wait to go to Facebook to get bad news. or give us discouraging words, with our own desire within us already does that. And we have to be able to fight it. And I love the way in here it presents Caleb. It says that he silenced the people towards Moses. We need to silence the voices within us. Because it's pretty loud. You have to silence it. It says Joshua and Caleb, going back to the Rabbi Nachman, Joshua and Caleb did not succumb to the blemish of the spies. They said, let us go up and we will conquer it. Even if Moses tells us to build ladders and ascend to heaven, we will do so. For with the power of desire and will, we can overcome all obstacles in life. This is coming from Rabbi Nachman, from Likudei Moharan, Halachot 2. This is very, very powerful. And an extremely powerful point in Scripture. And by the way, because the people did succumb to what the spies did say, the negative word, and they didn't silence it, there was a voice of reasoning that day. Caleb did speak. The people had a choice. There was the bad words of negativity, and there was the good words. Their fate was determined based on the choices that they made that day. Think about that really, really hard, folks. The choices that you make today can affect your tomorrow. So be very wise in what you're hearing. And not only what you're hearing, what you're accepting as absolute truth. So what happens now? But the men who had ascended with him said, we cannot ascend to that people, for it is too strong for us. Listen to the words of discouragement. They're too strong for us. We can't do it. They brought forth to the children of Israel an evil report. That gave birth to an evil report, Lashon Hara, of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land that we have passed to spy out, it is a land that devours its inhabitants. Now, I gotta share this with you real quickly. The rabbis always use, metaphors and all these different things and analogies and to compare. The land of Israel is compared to the Torah as well. Why? Because the prophet Isaiah says that the Torah will go forth from Jerusalem. So the Torah is the center of the world, essentially. And this is what the Torah, Jerusalem is the center of the world, and this is what the Torah recites. You see what I mean? When we despise the land, we are essentially despising God's Torah. This is very, very unique when you really think about it. And, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because how many religious groups today out there really, really, really scorn the Torah? Kind of like what the spies were doing in here. They were literally blaspheming the things that God declared that was good and holy. They literally said, this is too hard to do. Have you ever heard somebody saying that the Torah is very hard to do? There it is. This is what they're saying. It's too hard. They're giants. We cannot overcome it. And Kelly's saying, you guys are mashugana. We can actually do this. And this is what basically in essence Rabbeinu Mosheh says in Deuteronomy. The Torah is not hard. It's right near you. It's in your mouth that you may proclaim it, you may do it. In the same process in here with the people. Exact same thing. So in here we see very, very clearly that the people in here, by the way, only two are the ones that are very encouraged to go into this land. What I'm trying to say was the point. There's always a remnant. Out of the 12, 2 are like, let's do this, man. We're ready to conquer it. Let's go. Let's fight. Let's do it. It's worth it. The rest, not so much. So what the point that I'm trying to get at is don't be encouraged by numbers. Actually be encouraged by numbers, because usually a remnant is a good thing. If you're on the remnant side, more than likely you're on the right side. If you're in the majority, you might want to question where you're at. Not that I'm saying that always a majority is bad, but in general, majority just means that, it's not necessarily good. So you might want to question that. So this is, again, something that is really, really amazing. So, and we're going to conclude in here with verse 33 because there's a statement that is made in here that's very, very odd. And it says in here, the people are saying, there we saw the Nephilims, which is Naphal in Hebrew, which means the fallen ones. No, they were not demons. Naphal means anyone that's fallen. That's it. You know, like in Tanakh, people are called Naphal, Nephilims, because they have fallen. They, you know, like if let's say you are a Torah educator and you're a tzaddik, a righteous one, and you succumb to the ways of the world and you find yourself in the bar and gambling and doing all this stuff and just living an immoral life, you have become a Nephal. You see, in Hebrew. Doesn't mean that you're a demon. Just side note because of the audience here. So that's nothing to do with demon. This is just the generation that fell. That's all. They fell from being righteous. They came to a lower level. As a matter of fact, Israel itself is known as a Naphal. Why? Because they went from the greatest height to what? To the lowest level. Nebuchadnezzar was a great king. He went from being a great king to what? Living like an animal. He was a Naphal also. You see what I mean? This is how the Torah conveys this. So this has nothing to do with that. So it's saying in here that we saw the Nephilims, the sons of the giants from among the Nephilims. It says in here, we were like grasshoppers in our eyes. And so we were in their eyes. So why is it that the Torah and why is it that the people felt compelled to say that they were like grasshoppers? If you ever read this and you never asked that question, you're very unique. It's like, what the heck? Like, what a grasshopper? What does this have anything to do with anything? As it turns out, the people are actually making a declaration without even knowing it. This is what's so amazing about the Torah. That when someone falls completely and it's in rebellion, typically they'll make declarations of things that they themselves don't even know what they're saying. So what the connection that I want to make to this whole thing with the grasshoppers, I'll say just brings us to actually a Proverbs that our beloved King Solomon wrote. And in Proverbs, for instance, 6:6, it says this: go to the ant, O sluggard, observe her ways and be wise. The Torah says that we are to observe. King Solomon actually observed ants. And he was able to glean from the ants and gain wisdom from a little ant. A wise king, the wisest of the wisest, the wealthiest of them all, with all the gold and the silver. And what does he do? Besides studying Torah, he's observing ants. So, why is it that in here, ants are not used? Like ants is actually used as an example for us to mimic and imitate, by the way. What is so special about an ant? Well, I want to share some things in here with you that are pretty interesting. This is coming from Aish Academy, and it's very, very interesting. And the Aish Academy is actually quoting the Midrash, to be exactly, the Midrash Rabbah. And it says, according to the Midrash, the ant says to itself, this is what the ant says, perhaps God would decree long life for me, and I will be prepared. From here we see that the fundamental characteristic of an ant is that of preparation and saving for the future. As a matter of fact, if you watch an ant, that's all they do. They're always preparing. They're always gathering food. They never stop. They have the colonies. You know, it's like they have a whole enterprise that's amazing, by the way. I mean, if we only mimic a percentage of that enterprise, whoo, boy, we were sitting in a really, really nice spot. But it's amazing. This is really the characteristic of an ant. This is why King Solomon studied the ants. See, watch how much they actually prepare. They don't starve. They never starve. Because they're constantly preparing for the future. And the whole goal for an ant is the future. Keep that in mind. King Solomon, therefore, tells the lazy person, because that's what Proverbs is, it's addressing a lazy person, to observe the ant, so that he too can learn to prepare in this world for what? For the world to come. Remember that our rabbis teach us that this world is a corridor. a corridor that leads to the world to come. See what I mean? So our whole existence and our purpose for our existence shall always be for the preparation to the world to come. And what does that look like? Well, it doesn't look like you being pious, sitting in a room studying Torah all day, but rather that we can reflect and bring godliness and infuse the world with holiness. But then even in order for us to infuse the world with holiness and go into the mundane, we have to still study. We have to understand. We have to be rooted in the Torah. We have to understand these concepts. So then we can take it out to the world. So our whole existence, it's funny because you can be so successful, and some people become so successful, but they do it for the purpose, for the fear of heaven. You don't know how many articles I've read of rabbis who are multimillionaires or Jewish people that are multimillionaires, and when they actually do these interviews with these righteous ones, their whole sole purpose for that wasn't even to become rich. But their whole purpose with that was to build a community, to build a synagogue, to provide tzedakah for the poor. Like that's all they had in mind when they went into the business that they went into. That's interesting. If we all actually acquire that trait, how amazing that will be. And how much HaKadosh Baruch Hu will actually bless us. Because our intent, our ratzon, our desire, goes back to the ratzon. The ratzon is there. The ratzon is, I want to infuse the world with holiness. I want to make $1 million, not so I can go to the Cayman Islands and sip on margaritas all day long. But I want to make $1 million because I want to infuse the world with holiness. And I know that in this world, money makes the world go around. See, I'm still using the laws of nature because we do live in this world. You can say, well, I'm from heaven. I heard nonsense like that. I'm spiritual. You just don't get me, dude. I live in this cardboard box, but really it's a palace. You just don't see it. You're blind. But seriously, this is the world that we live in today. You want to be effective, you have to have a voice. Well, you can't have a voice if you're hiding in the forest. You can't have a voice if you're living in a cardboard house. This is what I'm saying. That's why education is so important. Balancing your life to understand I have a purpose in this corridor that I'm in right now. And in this corridor, I need to be influential. And the only way I can be influential is if I actually submit to the laws of nature, which means if I want to make money and I want to have a voice, I don't know, something tells me I need to be educated. And I need to go through the ropes that every secular person does. But my ratzon, my desire needs to be for the purpose of increasing righteousness. See, the secular person wants to make millions because he wants to control the world. But a righteous person's desire should be the other way around. See? But you're still the same channel. You still have to make those moves. You still have to use, as they call it, worldly wisdom, so that you can acquire to do these things. All for the purposes of creating what? Infusing the world with holiness. So, according to the Midrash, it says, this teaches us the importance of saving and preparing in this world for our eternity. So now, what is the grasshopper comes into play? So, the grasshopper, however, says in here, is an antithesis of the ant. Why? The grasshopper is related to the locust, which instead of saving its food for the future, is constantly involved in eating in the present. It's interesting that they made a declaration to something that they themselves didn't understand. And it's funny that a lot of times we admit to what we don't understand. We admit to things that it's like, wow, if we only knew what we're saying. But in reality, it's a reflection of our heart and our desire and the status where we're at in reality. So they were saying we like grasshoppers, little that they knew that they were revealing. Actually, when the Torah says that, it's a revelation of what those spies, where their heart was, what they were at spiritually. It was about the today and it was about the present. It was not about preparing for the future. Their desire was the here and the today. That's it. And unfortunately, this is how secular people live. They live for the today. That's it. Because to them, There is no other life than this life. That's it. You know, you die, you croak, that's it. You know, you ever heard of that famous saying? Nefila, nefila, nefila. This is a question. Yes, listen, no pressure. Just sit down. So listen. It's good to see you, brother. So the idea in here is that, again, with the grasshopper, it's all about the today. We want it now. We want to hear, you know, because if we don't get it now, you ever heard of that famous saying, you know, you only live once? Where do you think that comes from? It's really a secular standpoint of view, because that means that when you die, that's it. You're done. There's nothing else. So you better believe it. You have to. This is why most secular people live a life that they're the hedonist. And hedonist is one that's all about pleasure, you know, and that's it. They have to, because, hey, man, you only live once. So, but what a righteous mentality is that of an ant, not the grasshopper. The ant, and in the other words, sees, I'm going to prepare for the future. See, I believe I'm going to be here for a very long time. See, for the righteous one, we know that there's a resurrection, that there is a world to come, that this world that we see today is just a corridor. Remember that. This is not the end of it. So, thus, the grasshopper is symbolic of those who think only of the here and now materialistically, essentially. This is why the verse in this week's portion refers to grasshoppers. This is why they said the grasshoppers. They were not under any circumstances thinking of the future. They were thinking of the now and the today. And all they saw that day was Amalek, the fallen, the Nephilims, the Jebusites, the Hittites, and the Canaanites. And the little fig trees. And that's it. That's all they saw. And they saw the challenges. What I'm trying to summarize, all they saw was challenges. They didn't see the promise. Like, I can show you the promise, and you don't see the promise. You just see the challenges to get there. So you're not looking further. You're just looking, well, Richard, that sounds really good, but good night. I mean, you mean to tell me that I have to go through all that to get there? You see, your focus is, now the focus is no longer the goal. The focus is the challenge, the here and the today. Are you understanding what I'm saying? Sotah 34:8 in the Talmud states this. Rabbi Isaac said, they were configured like upper rods of scales that are balanced on the lower rods of scales, meaning there were not 2 but 4 poles. This is when they were traveling, bringing the cluster of grapes and everything. How so, they say? 8 of the spies carried the cluster of grapes, 1 of them carried the pomegranate, and 1 of them carried the fig. Joshua and Caleb did not carry anything. So, why did Joshua and Caleb not carry anything, they asked in Sotah 34:8. It says, if you wish, say that it is because they were more prominent than the others, and it was beneath their dignity to carry such a load. And if you wish, say instead that they not take part of the wicked counsel of the spies instead, as the cluster grape was brought by the spies to scare the people, essentially. Like I said, the land carried more than just that. It was more than just cluster grapes. Now, you can't live out of grapes. You know what I mean? So they chose to bring something very specific that would discourage the people, essentially, from the actual promises. So we conclude right now with this parasha with a really, I believe, a really powerful message. I wanted to really keep it compressed today because I believe this is so vital and so important, that our desire needs to be greater than our fear. Listen, I spoke a lot of words here today, but don't forget this one. Our desire needs to be greater than our fear. If you slept through most of this, remember this. And if you came in late, remember this. Anyway, so the idea in here is, remember this. Our desire needs to be greater, folks. Let's overcome. Let's not be moved by what we see now. Let's not be moved by what we're hearing. Let's not be moved by the negativity that surrounds us in our lives. Let's remove the clouds that are gray and bring in the sunshine. You have the authority to actually forecast your weather in your life, folks. That's one of the greatest things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has given each and one of us, the ability to be able to choose what our lives is going to look like. And yes, they come with challenges, but we should be encouraged by these challenges. There's no honor in something if it's so easy. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to brag about something that's so easy to you. You know, like, hey guys, I was able to ride a bike today, like, okay. Like 90% of the world does that, There's nothing meritorious about that. That's what I'm saying. It's one of those things that we want to aspire to greatness. And I really would love for each and one of you here today to walk out of this Beit Midrash here today completely changed. At least you're going to start looking at life differently. And you know what? If Facebook and social media is dragging you down, silence it. By the way, be very careful who you allow as your friends. Starts with that. You got somebody who's always talking negative on Facebook and they're your buddies. Guess what? See you later. You don't want that kind of element around your life. You're only going to be successful based on your surroundings. Surround yourself with success, more than likely you'll be successful. Surround yourself with failure and negativity, you're gonna encounter what the spies encounter here. A night of mourning, and furthermore, a history that travels with that for the rest of your life. So may we choose life, and may we be life, and may we be encouraging and have the desire to overcome for the promised land, and even into today that we can overcome and have the desires to achieve greatness for the purposes of infusing the world with holiness. May Hashem bless you and keep you. Thank you, guys.